Hi, my name is Remalytics and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm going to give you guys a quick guide of how you can use the first few hours of your game to the best of your abilities. So the first thing you're going to want to do is run out to the field with your new class. But instead, you should run over to the class guides and tutors off to the left. When you first spawn in, you'll run into the city and you'll run to the right or the left depending on your perspective. Over here, you can then select your main class abilities from your starting class. However, if you manage to run over to the counter to the left at the beginning, you can also select a subclass and the associated abilities. Those will become more important later. We can go into that in detail later on. But for now, let's focus on this. Here you can gain your new class, and by picking up your new class, you'll get a few introduction quests. These quests are very important early on. The reason for this being is you can get a 2-star weapon for your class, as well as some grinders, and practice with your main class abilities early on. This will enable you to determine whether you actually want to play this class. What I did here is I selected my main class as Gunner, and it selected my subclass as Force. This way I can utilize some of the Force abilities while using the main skills from Gunner. Class combinations like this are going to be vital. Before you teleport out to the field to Mount Magnus, which is a location I'll be going to here, you can make some food. Now, you might be wondering, why do I want to do that? Well, the food is very similar to the drink system in PSO2. For those of you who are new players, this system was essentially just 3 buffs for a little bit of cash. Here, instead, you can use a wide variety of items to make custom recipes. After you make a custom recipe, however, you have to go back to your Ryuger device, which is like your teleportation node, and then utilize that recipe to actually apply the buff. Once you've sat and applied your buffs, your character will sit there and launch, you'll see the golden glow, and you'll be ready to teleport out into the field. Let's head over to Mount Magnus, and this is where the fun begins. Now, teleporting is a very quick sequence, similar to what you would see in Breath of the Wild and other games. Once we get to Mount Magnus, it's important to know that this is a combat zone. Combat zones are centered around mob killing and events. Specifically PSE bursts, which I'm sure if you play PSO2, you're familiar with. PSE burst is noted by the rainbow burst meter up in the top left-hand side of the screen next to the map. This is very important for you to note because when this gauge starts to deplete in the rainbow form, the PSE burst will begin. During this, your goal is to kill as many mobs as you possibly can within the short amount of time, and at the end of this burst, something very special will occur. During this time, the more mobs you kill, the more likely you are to get rare drops. It's one of those, beat 'em up moments. Just think of any combat side-scroller and any beat 'em up, mash 'em up dungeon fighter. That's exactly what you're going to be doing here during your PSE bursts. You'll also notice that some of these mobs have weird yellow nodes on their back, or other remarkable body parts. These you can target for weak point damage. Weak point damage does more damage than normal damage and allows you to kill these bosses and mobs more quickly. This mob in particular can be taken down with techniques, such as those used by Force, to break its outer layer and shell and open up a new weak point. This will become vital for other fights throughout the game. Understand these weak points, you'll have to beat on the mobs and find out for yourself what you can and can't do. You'll also notice that the mobs have their own AI system. Each mob will attack and react based on, their species, which is really cool. So it gives a lot of diversity to play, but it also means that you, the player, need to be on your toes, and during combat you'll need to mitigate and migrate around the battlefield. After you finish the official PSE burst, mobs will spawn in. Specifically, one big, rare mob to finish it off. This mob will not always be silver or gold like the one you see here. This is actually a chance occurrence. Silver and gold mobs drop more loot, more EXP, and of course, all the goodies that you're out there for. Now skipping ahead a little bit, and these fights can be a little long, this will then show you what comes up next. The most important thing to realize here is that these mobs, upon their death, will drop really rare items. And don't worry, if your inventory is full, it'll go right to your storage. Up here in Mount Magnus, it's important to note that 3-star weapons can drop from these mobs, and also you'll level up quickly. What comes next? Well, you need to head out to the cocoons. The cocoons are set up like dungeons. The cocoons are designed around multiple challenges that you can see over on the left. These challenges dictate what you need to do during your time in the cocoon. The more challenges that you succeed at, the better the rewards, in this case, skill points. Most cocoons will require you to complete all of the challenges to a bare minimum. Perfect scores are most likely tied to achievements, which can later be associated with obtaining SG and other items that we'll discuss at a later date. The The cocoons are set up either as solo or group dungeons. You can complete them on your own or with friends. Whether you physically complete the dungeon or not, you'll still get completion if one of your friends manages to roll ahead. Sure, that may not be the funnest route, but if you find yourself struggling, that's a really good way to take advantage of the systems and move forward. While standing here, you'll learn mechanics like wall kicking and wall jumping, which allows your character to navigate the universe a little bit more, let's say, frequently with ease of access. You're able to wall jump, wall mount, back and forth, and even climb in some cases, similar to games like Assassin's Creed and Prince of Persia. However, your character can essentially just kick off of things with hardcore parkour and make their way up. It's important to note that you can set different keys for this and keybinds to ensure that the wall jump isn't based off of just clicks, but holding in the space bar or the A button, depending on whether you're on the Xbox or using a keyboard and a mouse. And don't worry if you miss some of these jumps during these dungeons, because there's always a route around. Even if you fall down to seemingly what seems like, well, your death, you'll get back up and you'll be ready to go again. In some cases, this could decrease your time. Decreasing your time in cases could also result in failure, so it's very important to pace these out. The wonderful thing about cocoons, however, is that you can repeat them over and over and over and over and over again until you get the scores that you want. Trust me, when you do your first cocoon, it could be a little overwhelming, especially with these omnidirectional controls. The best part about this is it really introduces you to how you will be running around the environment and tracing giant mountains, wide deserts, deep oceans, etc. This one's pretty cute and simple in the fact that you just need to collect different squares and different nodes. The photon blast is essentially like Goku's Kamehameha. What you do here is you build up enough energy over time, and once you've built up enough energy with the photon blast, you can release it on an energy. Here, for the sake of training, it allows you to use the photon blast right away. Normally this takes some time. As you can see, it's a giant burst. This damage is insane, short, and does a lot for you when the time comes. Just to be very, very to the point, these photon blasts vary per class, so depending on what you play, the effects will change. Now, after you've used your photon blast and navigated your first cocoon, the first thing you're going to want to do is head back to the city and meet Gaiden, who you probably already ran to already because the story will direct you to him almost immediately after you've reached the city. Assuming that this is the same as New Genesis at launch, the CBT here should be a good guide for you guys. He'll then teach you about Ryuker devices, which you might have already used, because in this case I've already run out to the field and mapped the area for you. Now is a good opportunity for you to spin back around and retrace your steps. Why did we go out, get all those levels, and head to the cocoon? The answer is skill points. Previous games with skill points, you would obtain them upon leveling up, and the skill points would only apply to a single class. Here, after doing cocoons in New Genesis, these skill points apply to all of your classes and become account bound. So no matter where you play or what you play, the skill points are universal. This becomes very useful if you want to play multiple alts, or if you really just want to get ahead of the game. As you can see, I've unlocked Photon Flare, which is the main skill ability for Force, which cannot be used by other, well, classes. And here, now you can see that the skill point is also over there on Ranger. Now after you've gotten your skill points, the game's going to ask you to go find a region mag. What is a region mag? The region mag is this giant happy-go-lucky machine that you, the player, can feed different resources over and over again to gain buffs. It's not like the recipes you made earlier for food. No. These buffs actually apply on a universal scale to all players on your ship across all blocks. It's really, really cool. You also notice that the items here have different values. It's important to note that, well, he has cravings, so anything you see in the gold or yellow text is actually something that will give you more points. Does it always mean that these points will be better or higher than rare items? No, but it does give you an idea what the mag wants at the time. And once the mag is maxed out and your buff is maxed out, he'll dance around happily, and you'll get the notification. Once you've done this, what's left? Well, it's time for you to head out in the field and test your skills. Veteran mobs. Mobs with increased difficulty similar to elites in certain dungeons and raids in other games. If you've come back from World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy, mobs are usually known as dungeon mobs, boss mobs, etc., sometimes gifted by a golden aura, some sort of signification. In this game, they simply have the title Veteran. The veteran mobs have an increased ferocity and increased damage, so it's important to go with a group when you do this. Now what comes next? The hopeless or god mobs. These mobs only spawn in during haptic weather, in this case rain. You'll notice when the mobs are about to spawn in because the rain is horizontal. The timing for this just happened to be perfect because we're out in the field hunting for these guys. Whenever the rain starts like this, in this horizontal pattern, it's very important for you to know that you've got about 2 to 3 minutes to kill the boss. If you do not make it and kill the boss in this time, he'll simply despawn. Also notice that a lot of us are focusing the legs. On this boss fight in particular, you want to break the bottom of the legs to get the boss to drop to the ground, like you see here. During this period, this opens up the chest for more damage. But just so you guys know, for this specific mob, when it's released on June 26th, it's a trap. Damaging this may increase damage to the boss, but it doesn't allow you to break the boss down. Overall, we found in the beta that attacking the chest was the most efficient route. We also noticed that this mob is level 19, so it's incredibly difficult to kill, and I recommend that you're level 13 or higher before you head out into the field. That's main class only. Your subclass can be whatever, but honestly, the higher the better. It just increases your gear score, which increases your damage and makes everything better. So, after you've taken down the big mob, or you're working towards the finish, probably wondering, wow, what do I get out of this? Well, not only do you get a good spot of teamwork and camaraderie, it allows you to test your skills, see where you've been as a player and where you need to improve and where you're going. For me on Force, I found this fight to be incredibly lucrative and easy. I was able to break the boss down with my elements and freeze him. These are 2 caveats of Force that we'll cover in future videos. However, they are incredibly important for mobbing and group content. As you can see, freezing the boss allowed my allies to beat on him for an extended amount of time. And because of that, we managed to kill him. Really cool, right? Now, what comes next? Well, you gotta organize your loot, but what do you do with all of that loot? I'll cover something called enhancing. In this game, in order to make your gear better, you can take older pieces of gear of a similar type. So for units, you could increase with other units, weapons with other weapons, etc. to increase the enhancement level in your units. This enhancement level increases your gear score, which overall increases quest variety you can access, and also increases your defenses, allows you to increase your damage, and even unlock different potentials. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed my first video, and check me out on Twitch and Twitter, and now YouTube, at Remalytics. I'm the leader of Omicidia, Remrem, and you can catch me on Ship 1 Theo. Alright, catch you guys next time.